Welcome to the first echo, where the past isn't finished speaking. Rome was not simply a city, it was an idea cast in stone. It rose from 7 hills beside the river Tiber, a settlement that grew into a republic, then an empire, then something so vast that maps struggled to contain it. Roman roads stitched continents together. Roman law shaped societies. Roman legions marched beneath eagle standards that glittered in the sun. For centuries, when people spoke of power, they spoke of Rome. When they spoke of permanence, they meant Rome. The Romans even had a phrase for it, Roma Eterna, meaning eternal Rome. But eternity is a dangerous belief. By the early 5th century, the empire that once ruled from Britain to North Africa was no longer whole. It had been divided into 2 halves after the death of Emperor Theodosius I in 395 AD. The Eastern Roman Empire, ruled from the wealthy and heavily fortified city of Constantinople, was stable and prosperous. The Western Roman Empire, ruled from Italy, was poorer, politically fragile, and under constant pressure from migrating tribes pressing against its borders. 2 brothers inherited this divided world. Arcadius took the east. Quiet, cautious, and surrounded by strong walls and strong finances, he governed from afar. Honorius took the west. Young when he became emperor, inexperienced and increasingly isolated, he would preside over one of the most symbolic moments in Roman history. By the time Honorius ruled alone, Rome was no longer the military machine it had once been. Its armies were stretched thin. Its treasury was strained. Its politics were tangled with rivalries and suspicion. The capital of the Western Empire had even been moved from Rome itself to Ravenna, a marsh-surrounded city in northern Italy that was easier to defend. Strategically, it was sensible. Symbolically, it was revealing. The emperor no longer ruled from Rome's heart. Beyond the borders of Italy, a leader named Alaric was watching. Alaric was king of the Visigoths, a Germanic people who had long interacted with Rome, sometimes as enemies, sometimes as allies, and sometimes as soldiers within Roman ranks. He was not a reckless warlord, driven purely by destruction. He understood Rome. He had served under Roman command before. He knew its military systems, its politics, and its weaknesses. What Alaric wanted was not initially the destruction of Rome. He wanted land for his people, recognition within the empire, and payment for their service. He wanted legitimacy. But Rome hesitated. Negotiations were stalled and promises were delayed. So Alaric organized his army and marched toward Western Rome. At first, the Western Empire still had one formidable figure to rely upon, General Stilicho. Stilicho was experienced, disciplined, and perhaps the last truly capable defender of the West. He understood that the empire did not have the strength for prolonged war. Its treasury was thin. Its armies overstretched. He persuaded the Senate to make a decision that earlier Romans might have considered unthinkable and shameful. He advised payment. Gold was stripped from public buildings, statues were melted, temple treasures were gathered. The Senate raged. "Have we fallen so low," one senator reportedly cried, "that we bribe those who threaten us?" Stilicho answered with cold realism, "We pay now, or we bleed later." Rome paid. For a moment, it worked. Alaric withdrew his army. But inside Ravenna, political suspicion grew. Stilicho's influence made him enemies. Court officials whispered that he was too powerful, perhaps even disloyal. Emperor Honorius, cautious and uncertain, listened. In 408 AD, Stilicho was executed. With his death, the Western Empire lost its strongest shield. Alaric saw the opportunity immediately. He marched again, this time with greater confidence. Negotiations resumed. Rome once more offered gold and concessions. The Senate, desperate, agreed to staggering payments, but still, an agreement was not reached, and talks collapsed. Alaric advanced toward Rome itself. Inside the city, anxiety spread. Food supplies dwindled as supply lines were cut. Hunger gnawed at the population. The wealthy hoarded what they could. The poor suffered first. Ancient families who traced their lineage back centuries now faced starvation. Messengers were sent repeatedly to Ravenna, pleading for assistance. But help did not come. Honorius remained in Ravenna, protected by marshlands and fortifications. He did not ride out to confront Alaric. He did not enter Rome to rally its citizens. The emperor and the city had become physically and emotionally distant from one another. Then in August of 410 AD, after months of siege and negotiation, the unthinkable happened. The gates of Rome were opened. Was it through betrayal or exhaustion that the gates were breached? That is still a question to date. Alaric's Visigoths entered the city. For 3 days, Rome was looted. Homes were broken into. Wealth accumulated over generations was seized. Though Alaric reportedly ordered restraint and avoided total destruction, the psychological impact was immense. For nearly 8 centuries, no foreign enemy had captured Rome. Now it had fallen. The shock echoed across the empire. St. Augustine would later write, in response to the despair, attempting to explain how such a catastrophe could happen to a city believed to be eternal. Across the Mediterranean world, people struggled to comprehend it. If Rome could be entered and plundered, what was truly secure? Meanwhile, when the emperor received the news in Ravenna, a later story claims that when informed that Rome has fallen, Honorius initially feared that his favorite chicken, named Roma, had died. When he realized they meant the city, he was relieved. Whether fully accurate or not, the tale endured because it captured the perception of his detachment. The Eastern Empire endured and would continue for another 1,000 years. The Western Empire, however, never fully recovered from the shock of 410. Though it survived for several more decades, it grew weaker, losing territories and authority until its final dissolution in 476 AD. The sack of Rome did not immediately end the empire, but it shattered the illusion of eternity. The night Rome paid its enemies began with gold and negotiation, with hesitation and distance. It ended with a realization that power, no matter how vast, is not permanent. The city that had once dictated terms to the world had been forced to bargain, to pay, and finally to endure humiliation within its own walls. Rome had believed itself unbreakable. In 410 AD, it learned otherwise. If stories like this remind you that history is not dead, it's just echoing, then subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Because the past still has more to say. Thank you.